The alarm bells rang through Earth Command like angry metal birds. Red lights flashed on every wall and ceiling. Men and women in blue uniforms ran from room to room, their boots making loud sounds on the metal floors. Commander Alexis Drake stood in the big control room. She looked at the huge screen in front of her. The screen showed space, but space was not empty today. Strange silver ships hung in the darkness like knives waiting to cut. These ships did not look like anything humans had ever built. "Ma'am, we have incoming message," said Lieutenant Jake Morrison from his desk. His hands moved fast over the buttons and switches. "The aliens want to talk to us," Drake nodded. Her face was serious. She had been a soldier for 20 years, but she had never seen ships like these before. "Put them on screen, Morrison." The big screen changed. Now it showed the inside of one of the alien ships. A tall figure stood there, wearing armor that shined like mirrors. The creature looked almost like a human, but its face was too sharp, too perfect. Its eyes were blue like ice and just as cold. "I am War Prime Kethver," the alien said. His voice was deep and strong. "I speak for the Zephyrian Empire. We claim the Kepler star system. It belongs to us now." Admiral Frank Patterson walked into the room. He was an old man with gray hair and many scars on his hands and face. Each scar had a story, and most of those stories were about winning fights. That seemed impossible to win. "And why should we care what you claim?" Patterson asked. He sat down in his big chair like he was not worried at all. Kethver's cold eyes looked at the old admiral. "Because we are stronger than you? Because we have better ships and better warriors? Because we always win? Always?" Patterson smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "That must get boring. We do not fight for fun, human. We fight because it is our way. But we are not without honor. We offer you trial by combat. 5 tests. Your best fighters against our best fighters. If you win, we leave your system alone. When you lose, you give us everything we want." Drake stepped forward. She did not like how sure the alien sounded. "And if we say no to your trial, then we take what we want by force. Your colonies will burn. Your people will die. The choice is yours, but you have only 6 hours to decide." The screen went black. The alien was gone, but his words still hung in the air like smoke. The room was quiet for a moment. Then everyone started talking at once. Officers pulled out their communication devices. Some people ran to other rooms to check on weapons and ships. Others started making plans. "Sir," said Colonel Lisa Martinez. She was a tough woman who had trained the best soldiers on Earth. "I can have Alpha Team ready in 4 hours. Rodriguez, Thompson, Williams, Garcia, and Jackson. They are the finest fighters we have. They have won every competition, every test, every mission." Patterson shook his head slowly. His smile was getting bigger, which made Drake worry. When Patterson smiled like that, he was about to do something crazy. "No, Colonel, I want the 47th unit." The room became very quiet. People stopped talking. Some people stopped breathing. Drake was sure she had heard wrong. "Sir, did you say the 47th Reconnaissance Unit?" she asked. "That's right, Commander. Get me the drunk squad." Martinez looked like someone had just told her that water was not wet. "Sir, those men are in jail right now. They started a fight in 3 different bars last night. Not 3 fights, sir. 1 fight that somehow happened in 3 different places at the same time. And the night before that, Sergeant Kelly tried to arm wrestle a robot," added Captain Steve Barnes. "A robot that was not programmed to arm wrestle. He broke it. Last week, Corporal Murphy got stuck in an air vent," said Lieutenant Amy Foster. "He said he heard strange noises. The strange noises were the air conditioning system. 2 weeks ago, they somehow lost a tank, Martinez continued. A tank, sir. It weighs 40 tons. They still have not found it. Patterson's smile got even. Bigger. Perfect. They sound like exactly what we need. Drake could not believe what she was hearing. Sir, with respect, are you sure about this? The Zephyrians are sending their best warriors. Should we not send our best warriors too? Commander, Patterson said, standing up from his chair, what do you think happens when the best fights the best? The better one wins, sir. Wrong. When? The best fights the best. You get a fair fight. Fair fights are boring. Fair fights can go either way. I do not want a fair fight, Commander. I want to win. Martinez tried one more time. Sir, the drunk squad is not even a real military unit. They are 5 men who somehow keep not getting kicked out of the army. Yesterday, Private Baker tried to cook soup in his helmet. It actually worked, but that is not the point. That is exactly the point, Colonel. Get them ready. Clean them up as much as you can, but do not try to make them normal. Normal will not win this fight. Morrison looked up from his desk. Sir, the Zephyrian ships are moving to the neutral zone. They are setting up some kind of platform. Looks like they are building an arena. Good. How long until our ship can get there? 6 hours, sir. Just enough time. Patterson walked to the big window that showed Earth spinning below them. The planet looked so peaceful from up here, but he knew that peace was about to be tested. You know what the problem is with perfect soldiers? He asked no one in particular. What's that, sir? Drake asked. They are predictable. They do what they are trained to do. They follow the rules. They make sense. He turned around to face the room. The Zephyrians have studied us. They know how our best soldiers fight. They have prepared for our tactics, our weapons, our strategies. But, sir, Martinez said, the drunk squad does not have any strategies. Exactly, Colonel. You cannot prepare for something that makes no sense. You cannot predict chaos. You cannot plan for the impossible. Drake was starting to understand, but she was not sure she liked it. Sir, are you saying we are going to win by being worse than they expect? I am saying we are going to win by being so much worse than they expect that worse becomes better. The Zephyrians are perfect soldiers. Perfect soldiers have perfect weaknesses. They cannot handle imperfection. Patterson walked back to his chair and sat down. Get the drunk squad ready, Colonel. And Colonel? Yes, sir? Let them bring beer. Martinez looked like she was going to say something, then changed her mind. She saluted and left the room, shaking her head. Drake stayed behind. Sir, I hope you know what you are doing. Patterson looked at the screen that still showed the alien ships waiting in space. Commander, I have been a soldier for 40 years. I have fought in wars you have never heard of, against enemies that would give you nightmares. And I have learned one thing that matters more than anything else. What's that, sir? Sometimes the best way to win is to make the other guy think he has already won. The Zephyrians think they know what human soldiers look like. In 6 hours, they are going to meet something they never imagined. And when they do, they are going to lose. The old admiral smiled one more time, and Drake finally understood why that smile was so scary. It was not the smile of a crazy man. It was the smile of a man who had just figured out how to do the impossible. Outside, the alien ships waited in the darkness, sure of their victory. They had no idea what was coming for them. The U's Defiant moved through space like a gray whale swimming through an ocean of stars. Inside the ship, Captain Sam Ripe walked down a long hallway. His boots made echoing sounds on the metal floor. He was not looking forward to this conversation. Right? Stopped at a heavy door marked Brig Level 5. He pressed his hand against a scanner. The door opened with a loud hiss. The smell that came out was a mix of old beer, cleaning fluid, and something that might have been pizza. 5 men sat around a metal table in the middle of the room. None of them looked like soldiers. They looked like people who had been found, sleeping under a bridge and given uniforms by mistake. Sergeant Danny Kelly was a short, thick man with red hair and arms like tree trunks. He was trying to balance a plastic spoon on his nose. The spoon kept falling off, but Kelly kept trying. His face was very serious, like this was the most important thing he had ever done. Corporal Tony Murphy was thin and tall, with dark hair that stuck up in all directions. He was building something out of sugar packets from the cafeteria. It looked like it might be a castle, or maybe a robot. Murphy's tongue stuck out of the corner of his mouth while he worked. Private First Class Rico Sanchez was cleaning his gun with a cloth that smelled like whiskey. He was humming a song in Spanish and occasionally taking sips from a small bottle he kept hidden in his jacket. His gun was probably the cleanest weapon on the ship. Corporal Jimmy Baker was asleep. His head was on the table, and he was snoring softly. Someone had drawn a mustache on his face with a marker, but Baker did not seem to notice. A small puddle of drool was forming under his cheek. Lance Corporal Pete Foster was reading a comic book. The cover showed a man in a cape fighting a giant robot. Foster was completely focused on the story, like nothing else in the world mattered. "Gentlemen," Wright said as he walked into the room. He tried to sound like a proper military officer. "We have a situation." Kelly's spoon fell off his nose and hit the table with a small ping. "Did we break something again, Captain?" "Because I want to say right now that the food machine was already making weird noises when we found it. And the shower in Block C was already flooding," Murphy added without looking up from his sugar packet castle. "We just made it flood a little more. And I definitely did not try to teach that cleaning robot how to dance," Sanchez said, "even though it was a very good student." Wright held up his hand for quiet. "No, you did not break anything." "Well, nothing new. We are representing humanity in trial by combat against an alien empire." The room was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then Murphy started laughing so hard, he knocked over his sugar packet castle. Kelly started clapping. Sanchez raised his bottle in a toast. Foster looked up from his comic book with interest. Baker kept sleeping. "Good one, Captain," Murphy said, still laughing. "What is the real mission? Are we delivering beer to the mining colonies again? Because last time was fun, even if we did drink half the cargo." Wright walked to the wall and pressed a button. A screen came down from the ceiling. It showed the Zephyrian ships hanging in space like silver daggers. "This is real, gentlemen," Wright said. 5 challenges: fighting with hands, tactical warfare, shooting, survival, and strategic thinking. The fate of the Kepler system depends on us. Baker opened one eye without lifting his head from the table. "Can we bring snacks? This is serious, Baker." Foster closed his comic book and gave Wright his full attention. "Captain, why us? I mean, we are good at what we do, but what we do is usually making things explode by accident. Sometimes on purpose," Sanchez added. He took another sip from his bottle. "And sometimes we do not mean to make them explode at all, but they do anyway," Murphy said. He started rebuilding his sugar packet castle. Wright sat down at the table. These 5 men were not like any soldiers he had ever commanded. They did not follow rules. They did not make sense. They got into trouble every single day. But somehow, when things got really bad, they always found a way to make things work. "Orders from Admiral Patterson," Wright said. "He specifically asked for you." 5. Kelly stopped trying to balance his spoon and looked serious for the first time. "Old Patterson asked for us? Really? Really?" "Well," Kelly said, his Irish accent getting thicker like it always did when he was thinking hard, "if the Admiral thinks we can do it, then we can do it. When do we start? 2 hours later, they stood on the transport pad of the UES Defiant. The neutral station hung in space in front of them, like a giant metal donut. Through the windows, they could see the Zephyrian ships arranged in perfect formation. Wright looked at his men one more time before they transported over. Their uniforms were clean, mostly. Their weapons were ready, sort of. Their attitudes were, well, they were what they always were. Kelly had managed to comb his red hair, but it was already starting to stick up again. Murphy had his helmet on, backwards, and did not seem to notice. Sanchez was wearing one black boot and one brown boot, which he claimed was for luck. Baker was awake, which was an improvement. Foster had his comic book tucked into his belt like it was a weapon. "Remember, gentlemen," Wright said, "we are representing all of humanity today. Try not to embarrass us." "We'll do our best, Captain," Kelly said with a big grin, but no promises. The transport beam caught them and pulled them through space. When the light faded, they were standing in a large room on the neutral station. The room was made of white metal and filled with soft, humming sounds. The Zephyrian champions were already there, waiting for them. Wright had seen pictures of Zephyrians before, but seeing them in person was different. They were tall and thin, with faces that looked like they had been carved from crystal. Their armor was perfect, without a single scratch or dent. They stood in a straight line, not moving, barely breathing. Their leader stepped forward. His armor was silver with gold decorations. His eyes were the color of winter ice. "I am Sub-Commander Zethrak," he said. His voice was cold and sharp like breaking glass. "I will lead the Zephyrian champions in these trials." The 5 human soldiers looked at the 5 alien warriors. The aliens looked back. Nobody said anything. For a long moment. Finally, Zethrak spoke again. His voice had a note of confusion in it, like someone had just asked him to solve a puzzle that made no sense. "These are your elite warriors?" Wright cleared his throat. He tried to stand up straighter and look more military. "These are humanity's representatives for the trials." Zethrak looked at each human soldier carefully. His eyes took in Kelly's. Messy hair, Murphy's backwards helmet, Sanchez's mismatched boots, Baker's sleepy expression, and Foster's comic book. "I do not understand," the alien said. "We studied your military forces. We prepared for your best soldiers. We expected warriors like your Alpha Team or your Special Forces." "Well," Kelly said with a cheerful smile, "you got us instead." "Sorry to disappoint you." "This is not disappointment," Zethrak said slowly. "This is confusion. Where are your medals? Your perfect uniforms? Your disciplined bearing?" Murphy turned his helmet around the right way. "Oh, we left all that stuff back home. It was too heavy." "Too heavy?" Zethrak repeated. "Yeah, and it made us look too serious," Sanchez added. "Nobody likes serious people." Zethrak looked at the other Zephyrian warriors. They looked back at him. In their perfect language, they had a quick conversation that sounded like wind chimes in a storm. Finally, Zethrak turned back to the humans. "Very well. Perhaps this is some human strategy. We do not understand. The first trial will begin in 1 hour. Hand-to-hand combat. Choose your champion." The human squad huddled together like a football team, planning their next play. They whispered to each other, occasionally pointing at the aliens. "I'll take the first one," Kelly said. "I've been in more bar fights than all of you put together." "Are? You sure?" Wright asked. "That alien looks like he was trained from birth to kill people with his bare hands." Kelly cracked his knuckles. The sound echoed through the quiet room. "Captain, I once knocked out a man twice my size, using nothing but a bar stool and pure Irish stubbornness. I think I can handle one fancy alien." Foster looked up from his comic book. "Actually, in issue 47 of Galaxy Warriors, the hero." defeats the perfect android by being completely unpredictable. Maybe Kelly's onto something. You're getting tactical advice from a comic book? Wright asked. Best tactical advice I ever got, Foster said seriously. Kelly stepped forward and grinned at Zethrak. Right then, your lordship. Let's get this. Party started. The alien looked even more confused. Party? Figure of speech, Wright explained. Kelly means he's ready to fight. I see. Zethrak did not sound like he saw at all. He sounded like someone trying to understand a language that used colors instead of words. As they walked toward the combat arena, Wright heard Murphy whisper. To Baker, $10 says Kelly wins by doing something that makes no sense. You're on, Baker whispered back. I say he wins by accident. Wright shook his head. In 1 hour, these 5 impossible men would begin fighting for the fate of humanity. The scary part was not that they might lose. The scary part was that they might actually win. The combat arena was a perfect circle made of white metal. Energy barriers hummed around the edges, keeping the fighters inside and the watchers safe. Bright lights shined down from the ceiling, making everything look sharp and clear. Zethrak stood in the center of the arena like a statue made of crystal and steel. His armor caught the light and threw it back in rainbow patterns. He moved through practice forms, his body flowing like water, each movement perfect and deadly. Every kick, every punch, every block was exactly right. Kelly walked into the arena from the other side. His uniform was still wrinkled, his red hair stuck up in places. He rolled his shoulders and cracked his neck, making sounds like small firecrackers. Going off. Traditional combat rules, announced the alien judge. He was tall and thin like all Zephyrians, but his armor was gold instead of silver. Fight until one surrenders or cannot continue. Begin when you are ready. Kelly looked around the arena. He looked at the energy barriers. He looked at the smooth floor. He looked at Zethrak, who was now standing perfectly still in a fighting stance that probably had a fancy name. Nice place you got here, Kelly said. Very clean. My grandmother would approve. Zethrak said nothing. His ice-blue eyes watched Kelly like a hawk watching a mouse. Kelly shrugged and put up his fists. They were big fists, scarred from many fights. Right then, let's dance. Zethrak moved like lightning, wrapped in silver armor. His first attack was a series of precise strikes aimed at pressure points that would disable a human without causing permanent damage. It was textbook alien combat, perfect form, maximum efficiency. Kelly dodged by stumbling backward and nearly falling over his own feet. Zethrak's perfectly aimed strikes hit nothing but air. Interesting technique, Zethrak observed, flowing into his next attack pattern. Is this some form of human combat training? Combat training? Kelly asked, barely avoiding a kick that would have taken his head off. You mean like in the movies? No, I just try not to get hit too much. Zethrak paused for just a second. This was not in any of the human military manuals they had studied. Human soldiers were supposed to use disciplined fighting techniques, learned forms, predictable patterns. In that moment of confusion, Kelly did something that changed everything. He grabbed a handful of sand from a small decoration near the edge of the arena and threw it right into Zethrak's perfect blue eyes. Hey, Zethrak protested, blinking rapidly. That is not honorable combat. You're absolutely right, Kelly agreed cheerfully. Then he tackled the blinded alien around the waist like a rugby player going for the goal line. Both fighters crashed to the ground in a tangle of arms and legs. What happened next could not really be called fighting in any traditional sense. It looked more like two people wrestling over the last piece of cake at a party. Kelly wrapped his thick arms around Zethrak in what might have been a hug, if hugs were designed to prevent someone from breathing properly. Zethrak tried to use perfect martial arts techniques to escape, but perfect martial arts techniques did not work very well when someone was holding on to you like a friendly bear and refusing to let go. This is not how combat works. Zethrak gasped, struggling to break free. Works for me, Kelly grunted, tightening his grip. After 5 minutes of the strangest wrestling match anyone had ever seen, Zethrak tapped the ground with his hand 3 times, the universal signal for surrender. Kelly let go and stood up, offering his hand to help Zethrak to his feet. Good fight, mate. You want to get a beer later? Zethrak stared at the offered hand like it might explode. I do not understand. What just happened? You lost, Kelly said simply. But you fought good. Real good. I got sand in my shorts and everything. The second trial was tactical warfare. They moved to a different room filled with holographic projectors. The walls showed a fake battlefield, with mountains, rivers, forests, and cities. It looked completely real. Each team will command virtual forces, the gold-armored judge explained. The goal is to capture and hold strategic positions. You have 30 minutes. The Zephyrian tactical team moved like parts of one perfect machine. They studied the battlefield for exactly 2 minutes, then began giving orders in their crystal-clear language. Their holographic soldiers moved in perfect formations, taking positions with mathematical precision. The human team, led by Murphy, seemed to have no plan at all. Murphy looked at the battlefield for about 10 seconds, then pointed in random. Directions. Kelly, go that way and see what happens, he said. Sanchez, try talking to those virtual soldiers over there. Baker, find somewhere comfortable and take a nap. Foster, do whatever your comic book says to do. My comic book says the hero should split the enemy forces by causing confusion in their rear lines, Foster reported, reading from the colorful pages. Sounds good. Do that. The Zephyrian commander watched in growing confusion as the human forces scattered across the battlefield with no apparent strategy. Kelly's unit wandered off, following what he claimed was a really interesting virtual. Butterfly. Baker's forces stopped moving entirely because Baker had fallen asleep at his control station, accidentally blocking a crucial mountain pass. Sanchez's troops were having what appeared to be a philosophical discussion with enemy soldiers about whether virtual death was really death at all. What are they doing? The Zephyrian commander asked his aide. I do not know, sir. Their movements make no tactical sense. Perhaps it is a trick. A strategy so advanced we cannot understand it. But it was not a trick. It was just 5 men who had no idea what they were doing it with complete confidence. Foster's unit, following advice. From his comic book, somehow ended up behind enemy lines by taking a route that should not have existed. Kelly's men stumbled into a strategic position while chasing the virtual butterfly. Murphy's main force captured an important bridge because Murphy thought it looked nice and wanted to get a closer look. The Zephyrian AI controlling the enemy. Forces had been programmed to counter every known human military tactic, but the humans were not using any known tactics. They were not using any tactics at all. Within 25 minutes, the humans had accidentally captured every strategic position on the map. The Zephyrian forces, trying to respond to logical threats, found themselves defending against attacks that came from impossible directions for inexplicable reasons. Victory to the human team, the judge announced, sounding confused. The Zephyrian commander stared at the battlefield display. This is impossible. Their tactics make no sense. That's the point, Reg realized, watching from the observation area. You cannot counter what has no logic. The third trial was marksmanship. They moved to a shooting range with targets at different distances. Some targets moved, some were small, some were far away. It was designed to test every aspect of shooting. Skill. Sanchez stepped up to the firing line, swaying slightly. He had been taking small sips from his bottle throughout the trials, claiming it helped his aim. His eyes were a little unfocused, and he hiccuped once while loading his weapon. A Zephyrian marksman took position next to him. His stance was perfect, his breathing controlled, his grip exactly right. He looked like a poster for proper shooting technique. Steady aim, controlled breathing, proper foot placement, the Zephyrian recited as he prepared to fire. Focus on the target, squeeze the trigger smoothly. Sanchez squinted at the targets through the scope of his rifle. He held his weapon sideways, like he had seen in movies, which was completely wrong according to every military manual ever written. The Zephyrian fired first. His shots were perfect, hitting the center of each target with machine-like precision. Each bullet hole was within millimeters of the others. Sanchez fired while hiccuping. His first shot bounced off the wall, ricocheted off a light fixture, hit a support beam, and somehow ended up in the exact center of his target. Impossible, the Zephyrian muttered, checking his weapon to make sure it was working properly. Sanchez's second shot went completely wild, flying off in a direction that should have missed every target in the range. Instead, it bounced off 3 different surfaces and hit another bullseye. The physics do not work, the Zephyrian protested, his perfect composure starting to crack. Physics is more like suggestions anyway, Sanchez said with a shrug. He fired his third shot with his eyes closed while sneezing. It hit dead center dot by the time Sanchez had finished. He had achieved a perfect score using shooting techniques. That should have been impossible. The Zephyrian marksman had also achieved a perfect score, but he looked like someone had just told him that mathematics was optional. How was all the alien could manage to say that Sanchez offered him the bottle. Want some? It helps with the aim. The Zephyrian stared at the bottle like it contained liquid mystery. You consume alcohol before precision shooting? During precision shooting, Sanchez corrected. Want to try? I know. Thank you. I think I need to recalibrate my understanding of marksmanship. The fourth trial was survival. Both teams were transported to a hostile planet that looked like it wanted to kill everything that lived on it. The plants were poisonous, the animals were hungry, the weather was angry, and the water was questionable. The goal was simple. Reach the extraction point within 24 hours using only basic equipment. The Zephyrian survival team moved with military efficiency. They tested the water, avoided the dangerous plant. The fifth and final trial took place in the largest room on the neutral station. Holographic displays covered every wall, showing star maps, fleet positions, and resource counts. It looked like the bridge of a starship, designed by someone who really loved complicated technology. Strategic warfare, the golden-armored judge announced. Each commander will control fleets across multiple star systems. The goal is to outmaneuver your opponent using limited resources. You have 4 hours. The Zephyrian strategic commander stepped forward. He was older than the other aliens, with silver decorations on his crystal blue armor. His eyes held the cold intelligence of someone who had won 1,000 battles without ever losing one. I am Fleet Master Korthvex, he said in a voice like winter wind. I have studied warfare for 3 centuries. I have never been defeated. Foster looked up from his comic book. In issue 43, the hero uses construction ships to build a secret base inside an asteroid. I thought mining ships might work the same way. That makes no sense. Yeah, but it's working, isn't it? And it was working. The mining ships had somehow created a forward operating base right in the middle of Korthvek's S territory. Foster's main fleet, which had seemed lost in empty space, was actually positioned to attack 3 different systems at once. Korthvex tried to adapt. He was a brilliant strategist, capable of adjusting to any situation. But every time he moved to counter one of Foster's moves, Foster would do something even more impossible. Your destroyer squadrons are moving in formation with cargo ships. Korthvex observed, his perfect composure starting to crack. Cargo ships are not combat vessels. No, but they carry a lot of stuff, Foster said, consulting his comic book. In issue 78, the rebels hide their fighters inside fake cargo containers. Want to see if that works? Before Korthvex could object, Foster's cargo ships opened up and released clouds of small fighters that had been hidden inside. The fighters swarmed Korthvex's carefully positioned fleet like angry bees. This is not standard human military doctrine. Korthvex protested. I don't really know standard human military doctrine, Foster admitted, but Galaxy Warriors has some pretty good ideas. The other members of the drunk squad watched from the sidelines, offering helpful commentary. Go left. No, your other left. Kelly shouted, even though space doesn't really have a left or right. Try ramming something, Murphy suggested. Ramming always works in the movies. Don't forget to check your fuel, Sanchez added, taking a sip from his bottle. Running out of gas in space would be embarrassing. Can we bring snacks to the victory party? Baker asked, already thinking ahead. Their comments should have been distracting, but Foster seemed to find them helpful. When Kelly suggested going left, Foster moved his fleet in a direction that caught Korthvex completely off guard. When Murphy mentioned ramming, Foster used an old cargo hauler to crash into a space station, creating debris that blocked an important shipping lane. As the 4-hour battle progressed, something remarkable happened. Foster's chaotic, nonsensical strategy began to overwhelm Korthvex's perfect tactics. The fleet master found himself reacting instead of planning, responding to moves that should not have been possible. How are you controlling 17 different star systems? Korthvex demanded. Your supply lines are scattered. Your defenses are minimal. Your fleet positioning violates every principle of strategic warfare. Foster flipped through his comic book. In issue 96, the space pirates win by making everyone else too confused to fight properly. Maybe that's what's happening. That is not a real military strategy. It's working, though. And it was. Foster's forces had somehow spread across the holographic galaxy like spilled paint. His ships were in positions that made no tactical sense, but gave him control of key resources. His supply lines looked like someone had drawn them while blindfolded, but they were feeding his fleets more efficiently than Korthvex's perfectly organized logistics. With 30 minutes left in the trial, Korthvex made a desperate attempt to regain control. He gathered his remaining forces into a massive fleet and launched a coordinated assault on Foster's most important positions. It should have worked. It was a textbook maneuver, executed with flawless precision. But Foster's response was to split his forces and attack in 6 different directions at once. You cannot attack in 6 directions, Korthvex shouted. It is impossible to coordinate. Your command structure will collapse. My command structure already collapsed, Foster said cheerfully, about 2 hours ago. Now everyone just does whatever seems fun. The final 30 minutes were chaos. Foster's ships attacked, retreated, regrouped, and scattered with no apparent plan. But somehow, each random move created new problems for Korthvex's organized forces. When the time ran out, the displays showed the final positions. Foster controlled 23 star systems. Korthvex controlled 11. Humanity had won. Korthvex stared at the holographic display like it had personally insulted him. This is impossible. Your strategy made no sense. Your tactics violated every principle of warfare. Your coordination was non-existent. Yeah, Foster agreed. It was pretty fun, though. The fleet master turned to look at the other members of the drunk squad, who were congratulating Foster with enthusiasm that involved a lot of backslapping and several inappropriate jokes. Are all human military units like this? Korthvex asked right, considered the question carefully. No, Fleet Master. These 5 are ... special. Special how? They're so bad at being soldiers that they've become good at something else. Entirely. What are they good at? Wright watched as Kelly tried to high-five a holographic display, and Murphy attempted to take a selfie with the star map. Winning, apparently. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship, War Prime Kethvar received the reports from all 5 trials. His perfectly controlled expression showed the first signs of genuine confusion that any Zephyrian had displayed in centuries. Let me understand this correctly, he said to his aide. Our hand-to-hand combat expert was defeated by a human who used sand and inappropriate wrestling techniques. Yes, War Prime. Our tactical specialists were outmaneuvered by humans who had no plan and followed a virtual butterfly. Correct, sir. Our master marksman was defeated by a human who was intoxicated and fired his weapon incorrectly. The human's shooting technique violated all known principles of marksmanship, yet achieved perfect accuracy. Our survival experts were outperformed by humans who befriended dangerous predators and cooked with their helmets. They also used fictional literature as a survival guide, and our greatest strategic mind was defeated by a human reading children's entertainment. The aide consulted his datapad. Galaxy Warriors, issue 96, to be precise. Kethvar was quiet for a long minute. In all his studies of human warfare, he had prepared for their discipline, their technology, their courage, and their determination. He had not prepared for their ability to win by being completely unpredictable. Send a message to the human vessel, he said finally. What shall the message say, War Prime? Kethvar looked out at the stars, where somewhere a human admiral was probably laughing at the most successful military strategy in the history of chaos. Tell them we need to talk. Volunteered to represent humanity. He was still carrying his comic book, which now had several pages marked with small pieces of paper. His uniform was rumpled, his hair was messy, and he looked like someone who had just woken up from a nap. I'm Pete Foster, he said with a friendly smile. I read a lot. Korthvex looked at the young human with confusion. You read tactical manuals? Strategic histories? Military theory? Foster held up his comic book. I read Galaxy Warriors. Issue 92 has a really good space battle. The Fleet Master's crystal features showed something Zephyrians rarely displayed. Complete bewilderment. You are going to command fleets based on entertainment fiction? Well, that and whatever seems like a good idea at the time, Foster said cheerfully. The holographic displays came to life, showing 2 identical fleets positioned at opposite ends of a virtual galaxy. Each fleet had battleships, cruisers, destroyers, supply ships, and support vessels. The goal was to control the most star systems by the end of 4 hours. Korthvex studied the display for exactly 10 minutes. His ice-blue eyes tracked every ship, every resource, every strategic position. Then he began issuing orders in the precise, mathematical language of perfect warfare. His fleets moved like clockwork. Supply lines were established with geometric precision. Defensive positions were chosen for maximum advantage. Attack patterns followed textbook strategies that had been proven over thousands of years of war. Foster looked at the display for about 30 seconds. Then he started moving ships around like he was playing a game. This looks like a good spot for battleships, he said, sending his main fleet toward what appeared to be empty space. And these supply ships should probably go ... here. He moved them toward the most heavily defended enemy position. Captain Wright watched from the observation deck with growing horror. What is he doing? I think he's losing, Colonel Martinez said, very quickly. But something strange was happening. Foster's apparently random moves were creating chaos throughout the holographic galaxy. His supply ships, which should have been destroyed instantly, somehow slipped through the enemy def. War Prime Kethver stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of the neutral station. His silver armor, which had seemed so perfect and intimidating at the beginning, now looked somehow smaller. His ice-blue eyes, which had held such cold certainty, now showed something no Zephyrian had felt in centuries: doubt. The 5 human champions stood before him in a ragged line. Kelly was trying to balance a small alien artifact on his nose. Murphy was examining the holographic displays with the curiosity of a child at a zoo. Sanchez was offering his bottle to anyone who looked thirsty. Baker had found a comfortable corner and was taking another nap. Foster was reading his comic book, occasionally looking up to see if anything interesting was happening. Captain Wright stood behind them, trying to look professional, while his men acted like they were at a carnival instead of a historic military ceremony. "The trials are complete," Kethver announced, his voice carrying across the large room. "According to the ancient laws of challenge, the victor has been determined." He paused, looking at the humans with an expression that mixed confusion, frustration, and something that might have been respect. "Humanity has won 4 of the 5 challenges." A cheer went up from the human side. Kelly dropped his artifact. Murphy clapped enthusiastically. Sanchez raised his bottle in a toast. Baker woke up long enough to smile, and Foster marked his place in his comic book with obvious satisfaction. "However," Kethver continued, "I must confess that I do not understand how this victory was achieved. Your champions show no discipline, no training, no adherence to any military doctrine known to our strategists." "That's the nicest thing anyone said about us all week," Kelly said with a grin. Kethver looked at the Irish sergeant with genuine confusion. That was not intended as a compliment. "I'll take it anyway." Wright stepped forward, sensing that this was an important moment. "War Prime, perhaps I can explain." "Please do, Captain." "Our entire understanding of warfare has been challenged today. We studied your military for years. We prepared for your best soldiers, your finest tactics, your most advanced strategies. We did not prepare for ... this." Wright gestured to his 5 impossible soldiers. "That's exactly why they succeeded." "I do not understand." "With respect, War Prime, you made the same mistake that many of our enemies have made. You assumed that our strength comes from our best qualities." Admiral Patterson's voice crackled through the communication system from the UE as defiant. "War Prime. Kethver, this is Admiral Patterson. Permission to address the Assembly." "Granted, Admiral." The main display screen flickered to life, showing the old Admiral's scarred face. His eyes held the wisdom of someone who had spent 40 years learning that war was rarely what anyone expected it to be. "War Prime," Patterson said, "you wanted to see what humanity was capable of in combat. These 5 men represent something your empire has never encountered before." "And what is that?" "The power of beautiful chaos." Kethver's crystal features showed deep confusion. "Chaos is not powerful. Chaos is the absence of order, the breakdown of planning, the enemy of victory." "For your people, yes," Patterson agreed. "Your warriors are perfect. They follow perfect training, use perfect tactics, achieve perfect results. But perfection has a weakness, War Prime. It can only respond to other perfection. It cannot handle imperfection." Murphy raised his hand like a student in class. "Are we the imperfection in this example?" "You are chaos itself, Corporal." "You don't follow rules because you don't know the rules. You can't be predicted because you don't predict yourselves. You succeed because you're too stubborn to realize you should fail." Foster looked up from his comic book. "That actually sounds pretty cool when you put it like that." Kethvar studied the 5 humans again, trying to see them through new eyes. "You are saying that their lack of training was an advantage?" "I'm saying that sometimes the best weapon against perfection is perfect imperfection," Patterson replied. Your strategist studied every human military manual, every tactical guide, every strategic doctrine. But they never studied the manual for what to do when nothing makes sense, because such a manual does not exist. Exactly. These 5 men wrote that manual today. Chapter 1. Throw sand in someone's eyes. Chapter 2. Follow the pretty butterfly. Chapter 3. Read comic books for tactical advice. Sanchez raised his bottle again. Don't forget Chapter 4. Always bring a good drink. And Chapter 5. When in doubt, take a nap, Baker added from his corner. Cathfor was quiet for a long month. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. The cold certainty was gone, replaced by something warmer and more curious. In all our centuries of warfare, we have never encountered opponents who won by being worse than we expected. It is ... Ukesho. War Prime, Wright said carefully. There's something else you should understand about these men. What is that? They're not really our worst soldiers. They're our most human soldiers. Cathfor's ice blue eyes widened slightly. Explain. Wright walked over to stand with his 5 impossible champions. Kelly once carried 3 wounded soldiers out of a burning building while under enemy fire. The building collapsed 10 seconds. After he got the last man out, Kelly shrugged. Building was going to fall down anyway. Might as well make it useful. Murphy once talked a group of enemy soldiers into surrendering by convincing them that war was bad for their mental health. Right? Continued. The enemy commander later said it was the most effective psychological warfare he'd ever experienced. Murphy grinned. It worked, didn't it? Sanchez has the best marksmanship scores in his unit when it matters. His informal methods only come out during training and competitions. Formal shooting is boring, Sanchez explained. But when people are in danger, boring is better. Baker has an incredible talent for finding resources and keeping people fed in impossible situations. Half the colonies in the Outer Rim owe their survival to supply runs he organized. Baker opened one eye. Food is important. Everything else is just details. And Foster, Wright said, putting his hand on the young man's shoulder, has an ability to see patterns and solutions that trained strategists miss. His comic books teach him to think outside the box because they come from outside the box. Foster held up his comic book. Galaxy Warriors issue 103 has a great story about how different perspectives can solve impossible problems. Cathfor looked at each human soldier with new understanding. They are not failures. They are unconventional successes. They're human, Patterson said from the screen. They adapt. They improvise. They overcome. They find ways to win that nobody else would think of, because nobody else would be brave enough or crazy enough to try. The War Prime walked closer to the human champions. His movements were still graceful, but they seemed less rigid now, more curious. Sergeant Kelly, he said formally. Yeah? How did you know that unconventional combat would defeat trained martial arts? Kelly scratched his head. I didn't know it would work. I just knew that fighting fair usually means the bigger guy wins, and he was bigger than me. Corporal Murphy, how did you devise a tactical strategy based on following random objectives? Strategy? Murphy looked confused. I just went where things looked interesting. Life's too short to be bored. Private Sanchez, how did you achieve perfect accuracy using incorrect shooting techniques? Sanchez took a sip from his bottle. I didn't think about it too much. Thinking makes you nervous. Nervous makes you miss. Corporal Baker, how did you turn a survival challenge into a comfortable camping experience? Baker yawned. I don't like being uncomfortable, so I found ways to be comfortable. Seemed obvious. Lance Corporal Foster, how did you defeat a master strategist using fictional literature? Foster flipped through his comic book. Stories teach you about possibilities. Real life is just stories that haven't been written yet. Kethver stepped back, shaking his head in amazement. You won by being yourselves. Completely, unapologetically yourselves. Pretty much, Kelly agreed. We're not very good at being other people. The War Prime turned to address the entire assembly. The Zephyrian Empire withdraws all claims to the Kepler system. The trials have been completed according to ancient law. Humanity has proven its right to this territory. War Prime, Patterson said from the screen, I hope this doesn't mean our species have to be enemies. On the contrary, Admiral, I believe our species have much to learn from each other. We could teach you discipline, order, efficient tactics. And we could teach you how to win when discipline and order don't work, Patterson replied. Kethver's crystal features showed something that might have been the beginning of a smile. That could be ... valuable knowledge. As the formal ceremony concluded and the various delegations prepared to return to their ships, Kethver approached the drunk. Squad, one more time. Before you leave, he said, I have one final question. Shoot, Kelly said. Do you understand what you accomplished today? Do you realize that you have changed the way two civilizations think about warfare and victory? The five men looked at each other, then back at the alien War Prime. Not really, Murphy said honestly. We just did what we always do. We showed up, tried our best, and didn't give up, Sanchez added. Plus we got to see space aliens, Foster said. That was pretty cool. And nobody died, Baker pointed out. That's always a good day. And we might get free drinks when we get home, Kelly finished.